It is my privilege to introduce this morning one who really needs no introduction, Dr. Cornel West. Professor, Center for African American Studies, Princeton University, Princeton, New Jersey. Dr. West is an individual who knows how to handle truth. He handles it not because he was blessed with a great mind, a great intellect, but because he has a genuine heart for people. He just loves people. And those of you who are aspiring for leadership, that is something that must be the foundation of everything that you do. For Dr. West, if you admire Dr. West, you must know that his works are produced by faith, his labors are prompted by love, and his endurance is inspired by the faith and hope that he has in God. That is something that you can't get from a book. And so I want you to not just listen to his words, I want you to watch him and how he gives of himself. Not just his gifts, but he gives of himself to people. And Dr. West, I want to thank you publicly for the support that you have given me and Howard University over the years. I have many Cornel West stories, but I want to embarrass him with one that I think is important. Some years ago, I don't know how many years, maybe 17 years ago, he was scheduled to speak in the chapel. And I called him and I said, Dr. West, I'm sorry, but you can't preach at Rankin Chapel. We have to come to Crampton. He said, oh, no. He says, I have to preach at Rankin Chapel. I've never preached at Rankin Chapel. I have to go to Rankin Chapel. And so I gave in. And back in the day, the Hilltop didn't play around. And there was a line from the chapel to Georgia Avenue. And there were more people outside than inside. And I had Dr. West look at what he had done. And I believe I sent you the article when the Hilltop told me off that Monday. But he promised me, he said, Dean, I promised you, I'll be back again and again. And he has kept his word, and he is just that kind of person. And I'm going to ask that you, just so you can clap for the kind of heart that he has. I want you to pray for him as he comes to bring the word, and I'm just going to ask that you just pray for him all the time, because he has a tremendous gift, but also a tremendous burden and a tremendous ministry. And one who truly does speak truth to power and speaks truth to the powerless, but in a way that is gentle, because he loves the people who he's speaking to, even the powerful. We will hear from Dr. Cornel West.
Oh, I'm just so blessed to be here today. I wouldn't want to be in any other pulpit than Rankin Chapel today. Because for me, this is a dying season. You see the tears in my eyes. Oh, my dear brother, Reverend Dr. Bernard Richardson, who I love so very, very much. Give him a hand. Give him a hand. Oh, thank you. Thank you for having me here, brother. Thank you for having me here. I need to be here today. We're losing some giants. And I'm just wondering who's going to take the weight, who's going to pick up the weight. Younger generation, you got to step forward. Do you know who distinguished Professor Ronald Walters Jr. really was? Ronald Walters. Give him a hand, a towering figure. His wife is here. Stand up, our dear sister. Stand up, our dear sister. We shall never forget our dear brother, distinguished Professor Ronald Walters, intellectual freedom fighter, not just at Howard, not just at University of Maryland, but all around the world. He's gone in the flesh, but he's alive in his spirit. We've got to remember those who came before. Howard's own E. Franklin Frazier. It goes on in the Gwendolyn Brooks in the poetry. Langston Hughes. Oh, my God. Oh, what a tradition we have, young folk. But you got to keep it alive. Then I come to town and I'm told that my dear brother, Minister Louis Farrakhan, is in town. I didn't know that. I didn't know that. I see my dear sister Claudette. I love you so much, my dear sister. All the members of the nation, please stand. All the members of the nation, please stand. Brother Young Khalid, where else? Where else, members of the nation? No, indeed, indeed. I want you to know that this Jesus-loving free black man loves you. And I want to tell you that my dear brother, Minister Louis Farrakhan, this Jesus-loving free black man loves him too. Oh, yes, we all in this together. I see my brother Capper brothers looking so sharp over there. I love you all too. Oh, yeah. You know how I love my Alpha brothers. We won't go into that now. And the Omegas, and then you got the AKA sisters that I love, and the Delta sisters that I love. But as precious as you all are, the brothers and sisters on the block, in the alley, around the corner, I love them just as much as I love anybody else. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, that's what happens when you talk about Jesus. If Jesus is really inside of you, you got love that cuts across. And that's what I want to say to the younger folk. That if you have the audacity to want to be a leader, it's not a career. It's not a choice of a profession. It's a calling. It's a vocation. And of course, tomorrow we're going to commemorate 43 years when they shot our dear brother Martin down like a dog. Right on the balcony. Lorraine Hotel. You all remember April 4th, 1968? I don't know about you, something died in me when they shot Martin down. I've been a different Negro ever since. True. I was born a Negro, became black. Some folk call me African American, but I'm my mama's child and my daddy's kid. And I am who I am because somebody loved me, somebody cared for me, somebody sacrificed for me, somebody attended to me. That's the only reason why I'm standing here. And that's true for you too. You are who you are. Somebody loved you. Somebody attended to you. Somebody sacrificed for you. No Malcolm X without Elijah Muhammad. Loved him in a cell, transformed the cell into a classroom. Went from a gangster and a pimp to a freedom fighter. Yeah, they had a break later, but keep track of the love. We always have disagreements. Nothing wrong with that. That's us lifting our voices. We're not looking for unanimity. We're looking for meeting where the love and the truth is so we can keep track of all of this social misery and suffering that nobody wants to highlight. Nobody wants to talk about. Everybody wants to hide and conceal. No, if you're serious about what they were singing about, then that's the kind of challenge that we're talking about. I want to thank my dear brother Raymond Ross, been with me 15 years with Tavis Smiley, give him a hand. 1992 graduate of Howard. And I thank my dear brother Tavis for allowing him to be with me and his blessed parents. Stand up, Sister DeRosa. Stand up, just stand up, just like that. Oh, yeah. No, the mamas and the daddies are special. Mamas and daddies are special now. Yes, indeed. And I want to start with that metaphor from the great Haile Gerima when he talked about Sankofa for the young folk. You got to look back in order to move forward. If you don't deal with the past, then the present is just going to be a repetition of the present, which means you're going to lose track of the best of the past, end up imitating what's coming at you, and your future ends up dead end. Salute the football team. Yes, how come? I always wanted to be a great football player. Just couldn't work it out. I was a star in flag football and tackle. They came running at me. I said, I'm going to the library. I saw brothers coming at me. I said, oh. I had Gail Sayers up on my wall. I took that brother down. But athletics is part and parcel of our tradition. Because the vicious legacy of white supremacy was also about the degradation of the black body, and we had to show that the black body has style. It can stylize space and time in such a way that watch Gail Sayers move through those holes in such a way that nobody's ever moved through those holes. He's not just going through it, he's grooving and moving through those holes. All of these various manifestations of our attempt to preserve our humanity, integrity, and sanity in the face of American terrorism. That's our story. That's our story. And that's why April the 4th is so very important. Why? Because Martin Luther King Jr., our dear brother Minister Louis Farrakhan, Ron Walters, Manny Marable, what is distinctive about all of them is that they love the people to such a degree that they can never sell out. They can never be bought. They don't opt for the highest bidder. You might even disagree with their conception of truth, but one thing you can never say is that they don't hold their tongue and speak from their heart and soul because they refuse to be sold out. And part of our problem these days is almost everybody is up for sale. Just show me the highest bid and I go for it. Looking for our musicians. Where's the legacies of Duke Ellington talking about come Sunday? Where's the legacies of Mary Lou Williams and Max Roach and the Freedom Suite? Where's the legacy of Gil Scott-Heron and the Last Poets? Where's the legacy of Curtis Mayfield? Where's the legacy of the truth tellers? Sly Stone, stand, in the end you'll still be you, one who's done all the things you set out to do. Stand, there's a midget standing tall and the giant beside him about to fall. Stand, you've been sitting much too long. There's a permanent crease in your right and wrong. Stand, straighten your back up. Anytime you straighten your back up, you're going somewhere because folk can't ride your back unless it's bent. Too many folk walking over, humped over, scratching when it don't itch, laughing when it ain't funny, wearing the mask, just trying to get through, trying to succeed and end up well-adjusted to injustice. Don't tell me about your success. I want to know how deep your love is. Don't tell me about your achievements and accomplishments. I want to know who you're serving. Don't tell me about your religion. Tell me about the God that you worship. I tell my atheistics and agnostic brothers and sisters, I love you too, but don't think that the God you reject is the God I worship. Make sure you reject what you reject, and I'm sure I'd reject too. You just haven't met the Jesus that I've met. You haven't felt the love that I felt. And that's what I want to talk about this morning. Who's going to take the weight? Younger generation. Because one day very soon, I'm going to be gone too. And I'm going with a smile because I'm tired. Shit. I'm telling you, last time Manny Marable and I talked, he said, the doctor told me that I had a disease I had for 12 years. I didn't know it. It's the price you pay for running across the country for 30 years every weekend. And I said, my God, let's look at our calendars together. I had 122, he had 111. I said, Lord, only Lil Wayne travels more than we do. And I love that Negro too. Tattoos and all. I'm glad he stopped drinking that syrup though. He's stronger than ever. He's a lyrical genius. I like his flow, but I wish he had more prophetic content. Oh yeah. Talk about Katrina, it's powerful. Lollipop, that's just not for me. But the young leaders, I know my dear brother, Professor Gregory Carr is here. Is he actually in the house? Where is he? Stand up, brother, stand up. Where is he? Stand up, my brother. Salute you. Salute you, brother. We're going to have wonderful dialogue today, this afternoon. His brother was kind enough to invite me to Ohio State when was it, about 17 years? It was about 29. Dang, you haven't aged one day, man. How you worked that out, stopping time like that? But you recall that dialogue with the one and only, the inimitable John Henry Clark. Let us never forget John Henry Clark, another great intellectual freedom fighter. Now, I wish I could go to the concert, the jazz concert, my dear sister, Nina Freelander. I've known her for almost 20 years myself. It's take place 3 o'clock, but I think we're still in dialogue until about 4:30. So we'll be there in spirit in the chapel, but we'll be talking about struggle with the younger generation. But this younger generation has to decide that you're going to cut radically against the grain of the mendacity of our time, because you're dealing with thick lies coming at you. That's very much what so much of corporate media is about, dishing out weapons of mass distraction. Lies, mendacious, tendacious formulations. And more folk have difficult gaining access to reality. And that's why first you have to get your story right. That's what I mean by saying, Kofi, you can't talk about the present unless you have an understanding of the past. What came before? Because you can't move without a conception of which story you're going to put yourself in, which tradition you're going to be a part of. Talk about 244 years of vicious, ugly, white supremacist slavery. Yes, we had great African civilizations prior to that. Yes, we've got to stay in contact with the grand contributions of our African brothers and sisters prior to the crimes against humanity, with the 52,400 slave ships that brought us to the New World. And what is it? We don't like to talk about it. It hurts too much. But it was the most intense form to terrorize the people and traumatize the people and stigmatize the people, to so thoroughly shake them up that they are forever afraid, fearful, scared, and disrespectful of each other. That's where it starts. That's where it starts. It was a distinctive form of taking a dignified African people and attempting to niggerize them. Niggerization takes a lot of different forms. But it started with terror. That's why 9/11, we black folk, for the most part, had a different response. First time the whole nation feels unsafe, unprotected, subject to random violence, and hated for who you are. You said to be black in America. Unsafe, unprotected, subject to random violence, and hated for who you are. Ain't nothing new going on. We are veterans of terrorism. We've been on intimate terms with forms of death. And what was the response? Well, that was the reality coming at black people. And it was against the law for black people to learn how to read and write. It was against the law for black people to worship without white supervision in the land of religious liberty. Persecuted religious folk. Predominantly Christians, never exclusively Christians. We've always had Muslim brothers and sisters. We've always had voodoo. And we've always had black atheists and agnostics who just reached the conclusion, none of this makes sense to me. Talk about Jesus all you want, I'm still catching hell. Works for grandmama, don't work for me no more. we got to love our black atheists and agnostic brothers and sisters, right? They got a challenge, a serious challenge. But what did black folk do? We had to authorize our own reality. And what did we do? We held hands in a ring shout. Didn't have unanimity, didn't have across-the-board unity. You held hands in a ring shout at night, and you lifted your voice. Sally Mae, just sing a song. Brother Hinton, could you just lift your voice? But I want the young folk to know they lifted their voices. They were not echoes. They were not echoes. That's why when James Weldon Johnson and Rosamond Johnson put pen to paper and wrote that anthem for black people, it wasn't lift every echo, was it? It was lift every voice. Lift every voice, because they knew if it's going to echo, you're going to echo the dominant reality that's lying about us. We want to hear the truth. We want to hear originals. We don't want to hear the copies. We hear it all the time. We don't want to hear imitations. We want to hear the creations of something that's real, something that's true, something that's funky. Because the funk always radically calls into question the deodorized discourse. That's the lies. Sanitized, sterilized, deodorized discourse. Everybody smiling. No folk getting crushed down here. These babies are being sold from Virginia to Texas. These black sisters are being systematically violated and raped. The brothers are being exploited. Somebody tell the truth. Even if you can't translate at the moment, just keep the truth alive. And we want the unarmed truth, unvarnished truth. We want the real thing. And the condition of truth is to allow suffering to speak. So don't talk about the truth if you just talk about your achievements, if you're not talking about the prison industrial complex, if you're not talking about dilapidated housing, if you're not talking about depression-like levels of unemployment and underemployment, if you're not talking about the way we terrorize each other, if you're not talking about the way we put each other down. Tell us the truth. Somebody tell us the truth. Love us enough to tell us the truth. We can deal with it. We might not be able to organize and change the world the way we want, but at least everybody's not lying and up for sale. That's what we're dealing with today. Nobody wants to tell the truth. When's the last time you heard a sophisticated discourse about the fact that 300,000 folk used to be in prison in 1980 and now 2.5 million are? Huh? When the last time you heard that 70% of those locked into that prison industrial complex are black and brown? And the fact that 72% of them in there for soft drug charges, and young black brothers and sisters take 13% of young black brothers and sisters take drugs, 13% of white brothers and sisters take drugs, 72% of the convictions, black. So, oh, Brother West, you're ranting. I'm not ranting. I'm just telling the truth about Jamal. Because I love Jamal. Even when he makes bad choices, he can change. Now, murders and rapists, that's a different thing. It's a different thing. Soft drug charges, you all know the new text by Michelle Alexander, the new Jim Crow. It's got to be read and reread. But it's connected to this same tradition of the lies on the one hand, authorizing reality by telling the truth. That was precisely why music remains so fundamental. Because our descendants during white supremacist slavery, not being allowed to read and write, for the most part, had difficulty communicating each other with texts and books. Not going to get a black Shakespeare if about 98% of your folk can't read or write. You're going to get Shakespearean genius in your song. Listen to the spirituals. Listen to the spirituals. Folk will be listening to those songs until the end of humanity. And they were created by who? Non-literate Africans. Connections with Africa, but no ability to learn how to read or write. So it was in the music that we first had our sense of dreams of freedom, dreams of emancipation, and you can't attempt to tell the truth without having the courage to cut against the grain of the mainstream lies. Courage, courage, courage. We live in a moment in which there's a courage deficit. People want to be popular and comfortable. They don't want to muster the courage to tell the truth. And like Martin, be willing to pay the ultimate price. See, that's the real issue. Your brother Martin used to say to leadership, snick with me in the South. He'd come with that beautiful smile that he had. You could feel the love just in the smile. He said, you got your cemetery clothes on? So listen, did you hear what Brother Martin said? That's right, because you're dealing with a terroristic system down here that will crush you like a cockroach in a minute. He said, I'm 32. I know I'm not going to be around for so long, so I just want y'all to know this is not a little game you're playing. Are you ready to put your cemetery clothes on? Now, I don't want martyrdom to be the norm for everybody, but you ought to know you're taking a chance. And you had some white brothers and sisters there, and you had some brown, had some other brothers and sisters there, but it was primarily a chocolate affair. Young black folk looked at each other. Dang, James, you ready to die? I hadn't really thought of it that way, man. Let me steal away and have a little reflection on this. I was thinking about Sister Janie herself. I said, Lord, I better explain that to her. It's like that. That's how serious it is. The connection between unarmed truth and unapologetic love. They go hand in hand. So the condition of truth is to allow suffering to speak. And justice is what love looks like in public. Just like tenderness is what love feels like in private. Then you're going to have to spiritually fortify yourself if you're going to be part of this same tradition that's rooted in telling the truth and attempting to pursue justice with love in your heart. It's not about you. Well, Brother West, I've been trying to tell the truth, and I've been trying to bear witness to justice, but black folk really don't like me the way I would like them to like me. That's not their responsibility. You're not loving black folk in order to get them to love you back. You love them because they're worthy of your love. Yes, they will wound you. They will scar you. They will sometimes lie on you. They're trying to work it out too. And sometimes you'll find yourself wanting to lie about them. You need to work it out too. But it's not about popularity contest. You see, this culture of celebrity that's in place these days, this culture of superficial spectacle, all on the surface, titillation, stimulation. And when you're down and out, it's self-medication. It's addiction to sex, addiction to alcohol, addiction to status, addiction to stature. That's a way in which you can ensure the continued niggerization of a people. If you really want to keep them niggerized, just pacify them. Keep them tied to the surface so they won't muster the courage to tell the truth. They won't muster the courage to talk about justice the way W.B. Du Bois talked about it, the way Lorraine Hansberry talked about it. And it is difficult. I am the first one to say, like my dear brother, I'm old school. I think young people are up against so much more today than I was, and I was living in a Jim Crow period. But I knew and I felt not just the love of Jesus, but of Irene West and Clifton West and Deacon Hinton and Reverend Willie P. Cook of Shiloh Baptist Church, that they had authorized a reality that had empowered me in such a way that by the time I got to Harvard and Princeton, I knew what the lies looked like, no matter how sophisticated they came in. I already had an empowerment. I was open. I wanted to learn something, but I had my roots in place. I knew who I was. I was open to the world because the world had something to learn from the tradition that produced me, just like I had something to learn from the other traditions. But if your roots are so weak, then your routes can be shaped and molded by anything out there. And that's what our young folk are up against. We know how weak the families have been in the last 40 years. How come? Because the greed has been running amok at the top. Not just wealth inequality, but outright stealing. Anybody see Social Network, the movie Social Network? Almost won the Academy Award. I read New York Times. This film was about the triumph of the human spirit. I said, they didn't see the same film I did. The level of greed and avarice. Obsessed with the 11th commandment, thou shalt not get caught. Get over by any means billions and billions and billions of dollars. I said to myself, there's more pathology here than any black hood I have ever spent time in. And there is some gangster activities in our hoods. Let's be honest about that. I grew up with gangsters. I got a whole lot of gangster proclivities myself. Nothing but the Holy Ghost holding me together. It's true. You read about me tonight and I did something, I told you so. Holy Ghost went blank and West took over. How come? Because like the brothers in the hood, I'm upset. I'm full of rage. And if I don't transform that rage into a righteous indignation, into a holy anger, into a moral outrage, then I'm in trouble. Because rage will devour your soul. Rage will make you pose and posture and act like you can do something you can't do. You just talking bad because you upset. You got to get a handle of yourself. But you can understand all of these generations of dealing with being terrorized and traumatized and stigmatized. Why wouldn't folk be out full of rage? Raise the question over and over again. 400 years of black folk being terrorized, and we refuse to create a black Al-Qaeda. No, we don't have a tradition of black Al-Qaeda, do we? So they get terrorized for about 45 years and get going. We got 400. And I think that's still an accomplishment. Because black Al-Qaeda would be a form of spiritual malnutrition and moral constipation. But at the same time, Lord, we terrorize each other. We terrorize each other. How come? Because the powers that be put less value on a black life than they do a white life. Let's be honest about it. But the best of the leaders who've come before could look that terror and trauma and stigma in the face and say, let's tell a truth that authorizes an alternative reality that will connect us to the best of the past, so that at least people will be able to see persons who have a love witness, a love of justice, a love of wisdom, and for we Christians, a love that's rooted at that cross, because the cross signifies unarmed truth and unconditional love that the world will crush in a minute. Why was Jesus put to death? The country boy hadn't got to the city. When he went to Jerusalem, where did he go? Went to the temple. To do what? Run out the marketeers, the money changers. He didn't go to the hood of Jerusalem and engage in a critique about their personal responsibility. He went to Wall Street. He said, what's all this insider trading taking place? All of this fraudulent behavior taking place. Billions and billions of dollars you have access to, and when you fail, you still get welfare from the government. $700 billion of corporate welfare. You say you're against socialism, but when it's coming your way, we notice you got a smile on your face. We notice you eliminated welfare because you said the poor folk don't have responsibility. When they fail, they got to pull themselves up by their own bootstrap. But when you fail, you go to the government, you get billions of dollars and say, that's the American way. We say, that's a lie. Something wrong with that. That's hypocrisy. That's mendacity. Don't you think that the poor folk have the same preciousness as investment bankers? Oh, banks are too big to fail. Oh, so little folk are too little to rescue? What are you talking about? 42%. I was in Arizona just yesterday working with the indigenous brothers and sisters. 42% of their precious red babies living in poverty in their own land. dispossessed, near genocidal attack. Nobody wants to really tell the truth. Just keep it deodorized. Yeah, we know they on the reservation. Don't talk too loud about it. You know what? I love red babies just like I love white, red, brown, and yellow babies. We're going to tell the truth about all the babies. 38% of black babies living in poverty, 37% of brown, 20% of all babies, no matter what color each one, precious, living in poverty in the richest nation of the history of the world. That's a moral disgrace. All the money at the top. The educational system collapsing. We hear from the White House, well, here's $4 billion for a race to the top, as this education is a race rather than a right. $4 billion, you spend $4 billion every 3.5 weeks in Afghanistan. Every missile that falls on Libya is $1 million right there. You already got 250 of them. What kind of priorities are we talking about? Our children are part of it. It's a matter of national security, not just Afghanistan and Iraq. How long do you think we can hold out with this level of poverty? Recent report in New York City, 580,000 young black brothers between 16 and 26. Well, let me start again. Between 16 and 26, they stopped 580,000 young people across the board. 55% were black. That is only 380,000 young black brothers between 16 and 26 in New York. So that's almost 70% of young brothers stopped. Stop and frisk, 5.5% arrested. That's ethnic cleansing by means of intimidation, because the black population of New York is leaving, especially the young folk, because they can't take that level of harassment. Where are the voices? Who's going to tell the truth about that? Who connects it to the history of the 244 years of slavery and then the 90 years of American terrorism called Jim and Jane Crow, where the Negroization intensifies because we were once citizens, but we're transformed from citizens into non-citizens again, but not slaves. No other people in the New World have had to undergo that. Even our dear black brothers and sisters in Brazil and Jamaica and so forth, they had slavery, but they didn't have Jim Crow. They didn't have Jim Crow. That makes a difference. We love our brothers and sisters from the Caribbean and Brazil and so forth and so on. But once you put in 244 years of labor, then you are made a citizen for 12 years and then transformed again into a non-citizen, but not a slave, just a certain kind of slave, and got to wait 90 more years. That does something to you. Nobody wants to really talk about it because it hurts too much. But you know what? The truth shall set you free. We're going to have to hit it head on. And we have not honestly had dialogues like this with our young people. We want to raise them in nice little sheltered context. Oh, we're not going to tell you about how granddaddy got lynched because you might get too upset. We're not going to tell you about how Alabama really was because that might get you. And they sitting there watching Felix the Cat, you know. Oh, okay, yeah, they're just watching television. He already addicted to TV. Okay, thank you, sir, very much for that history lesson. I'm trying to watch Felix the Cat. And what happens to them? They go out into the world and they're relatively unarmed. They're not ready. They're not prepared for what's coming at them. First time somebody call them a nigga, they ready to... Like somebody dropped a bomb on the neighborhood or something. And this is true for our middle class brothers and sisters and our poor brothers and sisters. But the reality is that most of our precious middle class brothers and sisters are not under the kind of harassment and fear of confinement and captivity that our precious poor brothers and sisters are. And as I told you all last year, I'm going to tell you every year, that if our black middle class brothers and sisters were going to jail at the same level as our poor brothers and sisters, we'd have a different kind of black leadership. Oh, we'd have a different kind of black leadership. Oh, yeah, they're hitting the Jack and Jill sisters and brothers now. Oh, Lord, no, we got to move now. Oh, Lord. Oh, this is serious now. Wait a minute, Jamal and Letitia been hit for the last 35 years. Yeah, we know that they got to work that out. We come from a tradition that says, like the great Dorothy Irene Height, we lift as you climb. Nothing wrong with being middle class, but don't make the bourgeois felicities an idolatrous. Don't let it numb you. Don't let it desensitize you. Don't let it distance you from other folk who are suffering, and you just one generation there. And many of our middle class folk have discovered they're working class anyway, because when you lose your job, you're just working class with a bourgeois identity. Now you part of the new poor again. Oh, lo and behold, all of a sudden now you got a close relation with the poor folk. And grandmama told you from the very beginning, just love everybody, child. Love everybody. Well, I read in my sociology book that actually now I have access to unprecedented opportunities, and therefore I'm going to have my career and so on, so on, so on. Well, what about the prison industrial complex? Well, yeah, I feel so bad for them, but I got to just keep on moving. I just got to keep on moving. Oh, we got some challenges here, and it is complicated by the age of Obama. It's complicated because our dear brother Barack Obama, we pray for our brother. We protect and respect him and correct him. We pray for him, we love him. But in the age of Obama, he presents an image, especially to black leaders, of success. I won. Yes, many of us helped you win, but you know what? It's not about winning. It's about what you do when you win. It's a wonderful thing to win. If John McCain and Sarah Palin had won, most of us be in exile. Let's be honest about it. Going to Jamaica. Resurrect the spirit of Bob Marley. So we're very glad we celebrate. Some of us were even breakdancing here in Washington when he won, because it looked like we could bring the age of Reagan to a close so that terrorizing and traumatizing and stigmatizing effect that was operative even between 1965 and 2008 could be resisted. But the challenge, he walks into the Oval Office. They say, this button, hydrogen bomb. This button, a bomb. These are the 150 military branches nobody knows about, but the world knows about 801. Here's an $800 billion military budget. Second is China, $65 billion. From 800 to 65 billion, all the nations combined still have a lower military budget than one nation, the USA. Mr. Obama, this is your empire to run. And the Wall Street oligarchs walk in. They say, we heard on the campaign, you sound a little bit like Martin Luther King Jr. You even got his bust sitting up here in the Oval Office. He's looking at us. Could you just kind of shift him over a little bit? We don't like that Negro looking at us like that. And remember, it was under Reagan. It was under Reagan that we instituted the birthday. Yeah, but what did you sing before you went out, Martin Luther King? That was sung in the Reagan White House right before they went out in the ceremony. The great John Hope Franklin writes about it in Beyond the Color Line, which means we thank you, but it sounds like your heart wasn't in it. So you're forced to talk about him every January. Okay. Those Wall Street oligarchs come in, and those corporate plutocrats come in and put that pressure on Brother Barack. Strong pressure on him. That's called politics. It's organized greed at the top. Disorganized people, poor and working people at the bottom, who will accent their predicament and attempt to raise their voices and zero in on their suffering. And I tell my dear brother Barack Obama every time I speak, I say, brother, I did not break my neck to support you if you're going to end up tilting in such a way that you lean toward being a black mascot of Wall Street oligarchs. You lean toward being a black puppet of corporate plutocrats. Because we notice you gave billions of dollars to investment bankers. What about the homeowners who's losing houses every day, not a penny? We noticed in the last State of the Union it didn't mention the word poor or poverty. First time since 1948 a president didn't refer to poor people. At least the right-wing presidents had a little lip service. They didn't mean that much, but they had lip service. But you reach the point where there's no connection in terms of the suffering moving you. I talk to black folk who go in and out of the White House because I keep my distance from the White House. Not that they want me, but I mean, it's true. You find me in the crack house before you find me in the White House. You got two kinds of addiction. Crack house, they're addicted to drugs. White House, addicted to power. And a Christian ought to be able to walk into any house. Crack house, White House, your mama's house, Mike's basement under the during the midnight hour with Rudy Ray Moore on the record, and walk away with Jesus in your heart. That's what freedom is. Radical freedom and love, radical love and freedom. Because you got your eye not on one person. I'm not trashing Barack Obama. I'm looking at the effects and consequences of what he's done in the time that he's here from the vantage point of the cross. And when you look at the world from the vantage point of the cross, you begin with poor people. What are their situations? Higher poverty rates now. Prison rates increasing. Education collapsing. That's not just his fault, but it's the fault of larger forces that are rendering him captive. So the Oval Office ends up being a golden cage and a sunlit prison. It's hard to be a free man, let alone a free black man in that office when all that's coming at you. And I understand that. He's got to run in his lane. That's why I still protect him against those vicious right-wing lies of Fox News. He's a socialist. That's a lie. If you want to see a socialist, look at me. I tell you what a real socialist is. If I got in the Oval Office, I'd downsize the banks and the corporations and be dead by Tuesday, but I did my thing. Oh yes, all that billions of dollars, that's going to the poor. That's going to working class people. Come on, Jamal. Come on, Letitia. Get it on in this. I got 2 more days. They gonna kill me. I'ma love you though. I'ma love you no matter what. Oh yes, that's where I come from. That's the kind of black man I am. I can't help it. I can't help it. I'm still a cracked vessel like anybody else. Trying to love my crooked neighbor with my crooked heart. They keep me from power. They say, oh yeah, I'm talking about the truth and love. Because it is serious. Many do want to kill our brother. We got to protect him in every way we can. He's got a precious family and he's precious himself. But he has the same preciousness as any other person of any other class, not just in America, but around the world. We intervene in Libya because we're concerned about innocent civilians. I was born at night, but not last night. Not a mumbling word about Darfur, not a mumbling word about Congo, not a mumbling word about the Ivory Coast. Innocent folk been murdered week after week after week, year after year, in the millions, not a mumbling word. Palestinian brothers and sisters massacred. 1,300 Palestinians massacred. Not a mumbling word from our dear brother Barack Obama. Then all of a sudden he come on TV and say, I'm concerned about Libyan civilians. I said, well, I appreciate the gesture, but I want moral consistency. I want moral consistency. And I do accent depression just in my Jewish brothers and sisters. I love everybody. Our Jewish brothers and sisters are precious. They've been trashed and pogroms and Holocaust and so forth. But Palestinian brothers and sisters, exactly the same preciousness. Occupation got to go. You don't occupy a people and think somehow they're not going to resist. Let's be consistent. If you know the man that the choir was singing about, you see, that's what we're talking about. But let's be very, very candid. The moment in which we live, where the deep, courageous, visionary forces that accent poor and working people have been pushed so far to the margin that most of our young people have very little access to what the voices and the tradition are. You see? You talk about black leadership these days, what do most people talk about? Politicians. Politicians? They part of a corrupt system of legalized bribery and normalized corruption. I love the black brothers and sisters and the others in Congress, but you look to the congressmen and women who need millions of dollars every 2 years in Congress to reelect themselves. Who's giving them that money? The two parties themselves, the mean-spirited Republican Party and the spineless milquetoast Democratic Party. Both of them tied to the big business and big banks. I'm not trashing them, I'm telling the truth. This is the truth. We got to tell our young people the truth. Now, you can cut against the grain in one of those parties, but you're going to be on the far, far edges. Bernie Sanders, he tried to tell the truth. He up there in Vermont. Some of those in the Black Congressional Caucus try to tell the truth, but they also know they got to deal with some of the others in the caucus. And what happens? The people perish. Why? Because they don't have access to a vision. There's a direct connection between voices, vocation, and vision. Vision empowers. Vision energizes. Part of it is that we once lived in a time in which our churches would keep that vision alive. But our churches now, more and more, weak, feeble, market-driven, turn into businesses, CEOs as pastors. They got a business model now. We're about numbers. We need to generate profits. No, the church has never been about numbers. If Harriet Tubman had waited for a mega church, we'd still be in slavery. No, Harriet Tubman's about quality. Just give me a slice of high-quality folk whose soul is on fire with love and justice, and it's going to become contagious in such a way that the ones who've been so niggerized and afraid, they're going to be interested in what you're doing. Maybe they can wake up and quit sleepwalking, and lo and behold, they'll be ready to join you. And the message would be what? As a Christian, if you're niggerized, Jesus deniggerizes. Set you free. Give you some courage. Give you some love. Give you some freedom. Don't care what the world say about you. You just passing through anyway. This place is not your home. Bear witness to a love. Bear witness to a justice. Don't forget about what the folk who came before trying to give you. Don't worry about some kind of abstract legacy in the future. It's about the love now. The sacrifice now. It's about the service now. And maybe we can wake up in the early 1990s. Africa taught the world a lesson, didn't it? There was a brother in jail on the terrorist list of the U.S. government. His name was Nelson Mandela. He taught the world democratic lessons. He said in the face of a crypto-fascist apartheid regime in which innocent people were being killed all the time, every day, U.S. government didn't say a mumbling word. They had constructive engagement. What did Nelson Mandela do? He bore witness. Happened to be a Methodist. I'm Baptist. That's okay. I'm with him. And when he came out, most of the white brothers and sisters said, oh, Lord, he going to do to us what we did to him. Just like they were surprised when Frederick Douglass came up and said, no, I don't want to enslave white folk. I want freedom for everybody. Oh, Lord, that's a fascinating man. Give him a prize. I had to be Wells Barnett. Do you want a Jim Crow and Jane Crow, other folk? You want to terrorize white brothers and sisters? No, I want rights and liberties for everybody. Oh, my God, that's so wonderful. Because he's so narcissistic in terms of how it relates just to their interests. See, Nelson Mandela said, you know what? I know hatred is a coward's revenge against those who intimidate you. I'm not a coward. I don't hate you. I hate what you've done to me. I hate crime. I hate lies, and I'm going to create a democratic regime. That was the lesson in the early 90s. Now, the early part of the 21st century, Northern Africa, teaching the world democratic lessons. Tunisia, Egypt, the Middle East, Syria, Libya, across the board, folks saying, you know what? We want more freedom. We want to be free. And we're willing to organize and mobilize. America began to pick it up. Many white brothers and sisters, predominantly white brothers and sisters in Madison. We need to pick it up. They're trying to take away our collective bargaining rights, right? Viciously attacking the teachers. It's these teachers' union, that's the problem. They're standing in the way. Well, why is it then that Finland is #1 in education in the world in science and math, and 95% of their teachers are unionized? Somebody's lying. No, what Finland does, they got 14 students in every class and 2 teachers in every class. And their teachers make 3 times as much as our teachers make. The teachers have status. Teachers have stature. When a teacher walks into a room, you say, there's the person who is the caretaker of our precious children. Let us salute that teacher. It's a different priority. We got warped priorities. But let's be very clear that in America, the children of the well-to-do, they're #1 just like Finland. It's only when you introduce poverty that America goes down the list. As you look at the children of the well-to-do, all the little private schools and prep schools they got around D.C. and New England and so forth, they do exactly what they do in Finland. Small rooms, 14, 2 teachers in a room. The parents are very involved, very important. Parents very involved. Administrators care. And then the students are told at least once a week, you're so brilliant. Whether they lying or not, you so brilliant, you so brilliant, you so brilliant. Self-confidence, self-confidence, self-confidence. That's what folk used to do 50 years from ago. May have been in Jim Crow schools, but the teachers loved the children enough to say, you can compete no matter what. You got 3 books and they got 30, that's all right. We can still produce a Du Bois. But we quit doing that to many of our young people. Look at them with scorn and disdain. And they look back at us with scorn and disdain, and the generation gap increases and escalates deeper and deeper and deeper. Was it Biggie who said the first time in black history that old folk were afraid of the young folk? And that's Biggie from Brooklyn. I had Jay-Z in my class just a few months ago. He said, I'm trying to be Plato to Biggie's Socrates. Trying to keep alive the legacy of Biggie the way Plato kept alive the legacy of Socrates. Biggie didn't live, flower and flourish the way Jay-Z did. Same tradition. But telling truths, how do we reconnect with our young people? Thank God for Susan Taylor and her national mentoring program. Thank God for the sororities and fraternities in schools connecting with the young people. Get in the life, stay in the life of young folk. Don't allow them to say their mentor is Oprah Winfrey. No, Oprah don't know you. She's not your mentor. You need somebody there, touches you, talks to you, reflects, wrestles with you, shows a love for you. You can talk to them in the midnight hour. That's what a mentor is. She's an entrepreneurial genius that is successful, but it's not just about success. You can have all kind of successful Negroes and still have black folk catching hell. And the ones who are successful, many of them self-medicated. Because they know that many of them on the job are accepted at a symbolic and cosmetic way and not deeply self-respected no matter how much money they are making. That's what we're talking about. You all are very kind to let me go on so long. But let me end on this note. That I'm old school enough to believe that if you accept a Jesus who will deniggerize you and change your life, you can become critically oriented, courageous enough to engage, working with those concerned with peace and justice from the underside, the poor and working classes, not just here but around the world. And there's a rich tradition that can justify that going all the way back 400 years. And all I ask you today is take that Jesus who deniggerizes seriously. change your life. Thank you all so very much.